Okay, thank you everyone for joining us this morning for the policy review training. I know it's reviewing policies may not be fun, but it's definitely something we have to do every once in a while. And as we get started, I did include this agenda just so everyone knows in case you want to maybe take a picture of it, just so you're aware of the policies that we're reviewing today, so you could later on check it for yourself in your own handbook. And we will get into this a little bit further into the training, so Dr. Harms will bring it up. But we do have to make some changes to our handbook. And once those changes are made, we will have to do this training again. So keeping that in mind, knowing that we will have to go through this again in not sure when, but and it's going to be a very similar policy training, just reviewing the policies and what has changed. Keeping that on for a little bit longer. Let's see. Okay, so as I'm changing my screen over, my plan is to read this directly from the handbook. I noticed that was easier. So already warning you all of any potential whiplash, just in case I'm moving my screen a little bit too fast. Let's see. Maybe. There you go. And I do apologize in advance. I don't know if this might get a little boring, if my voice gets a little too monotone, but we will be just reading directly from the handbook, and hopefully this is, I'm going to make it just a little bit bigger so everyone is able to see it. Okay, well, if anyone else joins us as I'm going along, hopefully they're able to catch up afterwards. The first policy we will be reviewing is that of the equal employment opportunity, and that is located on page 7 of our handbook, just in case you do have it handy. So within that, we have, in order to provide equal employment and advancement opportunities to all individuals, employment decisions at NAMI Kansas will be based on merit, qualifications, skills, and abilities. NAMI Kansas does not discriminate in employment opportunities or practices on the basis of race, color, religion, sex, national origin, age, disability, ancestry, citizenship, sex or gender, pregnant woman, genetic identity, and veterans or any other characteristic protected by law. And if you have any questions at any point of this, you go ahead and raise your hand. Brittany will let me know in case anyone has their hand raised, or you could also use the chat box option as well. Let me just make this a little bit bigger. This next policy on diversity and inclusion is on page 8, towards the end. So this is a non-discrimination. NAMI Kansas will actively recruit, engage, and serve members from every race, culture, ethnicity, age, religion, and socioeconomic status, sexual orientation, gender identity, and disability, and will not discriminate in the requirements for membership, provision of service, or support, or in its policies or actions. Getting into the membership demographics, the NAMI Kansas Board of Directors will regularly review their own composition and membership demographics compared to those of the country using national census data in order to aspire towards reflecting that composition. In keeping with NAMI Kansas values regarding not discrimination and applicable federal law, NAMI Kansas will include in bylaws, operating policies and procedures, and other relevant policy documents, explicit statements that require the organization to embrace the broadest possible definition of inclusion and non-discrimination. So confidentiality. NAMI Kansas may collect a baseline of members' voluntarily supplied demographic information. Systems will be put in place to protect the confidentiality of this information. Demographic information will only be reported aggregate in the aggregate. Reach. NAMI Kansas will reach out to and welcome the community at large through our recruitment, marketing, public education, and awareness activities. NAMI Kansas will strive to support recruitment and retention of a diverse and inclusive membership and leadership. growth. NAMI Kansas will promote and mentor NAMI affiliate diversity and inclusion efforts. Whenever there is a demand and the interests of members can best be served by a support through groups sharing some affinity, including but not limited to lived experience or primary language. NAMI Kansas will encourage its affiliates to move beyond their baseline. And the following one is a policy and procedure for communication with persons with limited English proficiency. So that's an LEP. And let me adjust my screen a little bit. NAMI Kansas will take reasonable steps to ensure that persons with limited English proficiency, or LEP, have meaningful access and an opportunity to participate in our services, activities, programs, and other benefits. The policy of NAMI Kansas is to ensure meaningful communication with LEP patients/clients and their authorized representatives inv involving their medical conditions and treatment. The policy also provides for communication of information contained in vital documents, including but not limited to waivers of rights, consent to treatment forms, financial and insurance benefits form, etc. All interpreters, translators, and other aides needed to comply with this policy will be provided without cost to the person being served, and patients/clients and their families will be informed of the ability of such assistance free of charge. Language assistance will be provided through use of competent bilingual staff, staff members, contracts, or formal arrangements with local organizations providing interpretation or translation services or technology, and telephonic interpretation services. All staff will be provided notice of this policy and procedure, and staff that may have direct contact with LP individuals will be trained in effective and communication techniques, including the effective use of an interpreter. NAMI Kansas will comply with the title of the 1964 Civil Rights Act on the grounds of race, color, and national origin. NAMI Kansas will not execute from participation in, deny the benefits of, or subject to discrimination any person under any program or activity receiving federal financial assistance. NAMI Kansas will conduct a regular review of the language access needs of our participant population as well as update and monitor the implementation of the policy and these procedures as necessary. NAMI Kansas will train NAMI Kansas staff on the LAP policy annually, occurring on or before February 1st of every year. Procedures. Number 1, identifying LAP persons and their language. NAMI Kansas will promptly identify the language and communication needs of the LAP person. If necessary, staff will use a language identification card or iSpeak cards available online at www.lap.gov or posters to determine the language. In addition, when records are kept of past interactions with participants or family members, the language used to communicate with the LP person will be included as part of the record. Number 2, obtaining a qualified interpreter. NAMI Kansas project directors and program directors are responsible for maintaining an accurate and current list showing the name, language, phone number, and hours of availability of bilingual staff. Contacting the appropriate bilingual staff member to interpret in the event that an interpreter is needed if an employee who speaks the needed language is available and qualified to interpret. Obtaining an outside interpreter if a bilingual staff or staff member is not available or does not speak the needed language. NAMI Kansas will utilize building the gap interpreting. Hold on. NAMI Kansas will utilize bridging the gap interpreting or other translating services to provide qualified interpreter services. The agency's phone number is 913-204-0230, and the hours of availability are 24 hours per day, 7 days a week. Some LP persons may prefer or request to use a family member or friend as an interpreter. However, family members or friends of the LP person will not be used as interpreters unless specifically requested by that individual and after the LP person has understood that an opportunity for an interpreter at no charge to the person has been made by the facility. Such an offer and the response will be documented in the person's file. If the LP person chooses to use a family member or friend as an interpreter, Issues of competency of interpretation, confidentiality, privacy, and conflict of interest will be considered. If the family member or friend is not competent or appropriate for any of these reasons, competent interpreter services will be provided to the LOP person. Children and other clients/patients or residents will not be used to interpret in order to ensure confidentiality of information and accurate communication. 3. Providing written translations. When translation of vital documents is needed, each unit in NAMI Kansas will submit documents for translation into frequently encountered languages to the finance manager. Original document being submitted for translation will be in final approved form with updated and accurate legal information.
Yeah.
Facilities will provide translation of other written materials if needed, as well as written notice of the ability of translation, free of charge for LP individuals. NAMI Kansas will set benchmarks for translation of vital documents into additional languages over time. Number 4, providing notice to LP persons. NAMI Kansas will inform LP persons of the availability of language assistance, free of charge, by providing written notice in languages LP persons will understand. At a minimum, notices and signs will be posted on the NAMI Kansas website. Notification will also be provided through one or more of the following: outreach documents and/or community-based organizations. Number 5, monitoring language needs and implementation. On an ongoing basis, NAMI Kansas will assess changes in demographics, types of services, and other needs that may require reevaluation of this policy and its procedures. In addition, NAMI Kansas will regularly assess the efficacy of these procedures, including but not limited to mechanisms for securing interpreter services, equipment used for the delivery of language assistance, complaints filed by LP persons, feedback from participants and community organizations, etc.
We have a hand raised, that's all.
Okay, you go ahead and ask your question.
I think that's Jessica.
Sorry, that's an accident.
Oh, okay. Thank you. The following policy is harassment policy and complaint/investigation procedure. That is on page 11. So we have objective. The objective of this policy is to define workplace harassment and outline procedures for filing complaints, investigating all types of harassment claims, and issuing appropriate disciplinary measures in case of violations. Scope. This policy applies to all employees in NAMI Kansas at entry level who will be subject to discipline up to and including termination of employment for any violation of this policy. Employees are prohibited from harassing others both on and off the business premises and during or outside of work hours. It is NAMI Kansas policy to prohibit intentional and unintentional harassment of or against job applicants, contractors, interns, volunteers, or employees by another employee, supervisor, vendor, customer, or third party based on actual or perceived race, color, creed, religion, national origin, ancestry, citizenship status, age, sex, or gender, including pregnancy, childbirth, and pregnancy-related conditions, gender identity or expression, including transgender status, sexual orientation, marital status, military service, and veteran status, physical or mental disability, genetic information, or any other characteristic protected by applicable federal, state, or local laws. Such conduct would not be tolerated by NAMI Kansas. Furthermore, any retaliation against an individual who has complained about or about any type of harassment or retaliation against individuals for cooperating with an investigation of a harassment complaint is simply unlawful and will not be tolerated. NAMI Kansas will take all reasonable steps necessary to prevent and eliminate unlawful harassment. Defining unlawful harassment. Unlawful harassment is conduct that has the purpose or effect of creating and intimidating a hostile or an offensive work environment. Has the purpose of substantiability and unreasonably interfering with an individual's work performance, rather adversely affects on individuals' employment opportunities because of the individual's membership in a protected class. Unlawful harassment includes, but is not limited to, epithets, slurs, jokes, pranks, innuendos, comments, written or graphic materials, stereotyping or other threatening, hostile, or intimidating acts based on race, color, ancestry, national origin, gender, sex, sexual orientation, marital status, religion, age, disability, veteran status, or any other characteristic protected by state or federal law. Defining sexual harassment. While all forms of harassment are prohibited, special attention should be paid to sexual harassment. Sexual harassment can include all the above actions as well as all other unwelcome conduct and is generally defined under both state and federal Equal Employment Opportunity Commission as unwelcomed sexual advancements, requests for sexual favors, and or verbal or psychological or physical conduct of a sexual nature where, whereby submission to such conduct is made either explicitly or implicitly a term or condition of an individual's employment. Submission to or rejection of such conduct by an individual is used as the basis for employment decisions affecting such individual, or such conduct has the purpose or effect of unreasonably interfering with an individual's work performance or creating an intimidating, hostile, or offensive work environment. Other sexually oriented conduct, whether intended or not, that is unwelcome or has the effect of creating a work environment that is hostile, effective, intimidating, or humiliating to other workers, may also constitute sexual harassment. Examples of prohibitive conduct. While it is not possible to list all the possible circumstances that may constitute sexual harassment, but actions that are unwelcome may constitute sexual harassment depending on the totality of the circumstances, including the severity of the conduct and its persuasiveness. Below are some examples of specifically prohibited conduct. Physical assault of a sexual nature, such as rape, sexual battery, molestation, or attempts to commit these assaults in intentional physical conduct that is sexual in nature, such as touching, pinching, patting, grabbing, brushing against other employee's body, or poking another employee's body. Unwelcome sexual advances, propositions, or other sexual comments, such as sexually oriented gestures, noises, remarks, jokes, or comments about a person's sexuality or sexual experience. Sexual epithets, jokes, written or oral references to sexual conducts, gossip regarding one's sex life, comments about an individual's body, and comments about an individual's sexual activity, defiancies, or powerness. Displaying sexual suggestive objects, pictures, or cartoons. Unwelcome leering, whistling, brushing up against the body, sexual gestures, or suggestive or insulting comments. Inquiries into one's sexual experience and discussion of one's sexual activities. Preferential treatment or promises of preferential treatment to an employee for submitting to sexual conduct, including soliciting or attempting to solicit an employee to engage in sexual activity for compensation or reward. Subjecting or threats of subjecting an employee's unwelcome sexual attention or conduct or intentionality make performance of the employee's job more difficult because of the employee's sex. Sex or discriminatory displays or publications anywhere in NAMI Kansas workplace by the NAMI Kansas employees. And retaliation for sexual harassment complaints. All employees should take special note that retaliation against an individual who has complained about sexual or other harassments and retaliation against individuals for cooperating with an investigation of sexual or other harassment complaints violate NAMI Kansas policy. Procedure. Step number 1. Complaint files as a report. If an employee feels that he or she is being subjected to any type of harassment, he or she may immediately inform the accused employee that the conduct is unwelcome and needs to stop. If the inappropriate conduct does not cease, or if the employee is unable to or uncomfortable with addressing the alleged accused employee directly, the employee should report the incident to his or her own supervisor or to the HR department. Complaints should be submitted as soon as possible after an accident has occurred, preferably in writing, The HR department may assist with the complaint in completing a written statement, or in the event an employee refuses to provide information in writing, the HR department will dictate the verbal complaint. To ensure the prompt and thorough investigation of any harassment complaint, the compliant should provide as much as the following information as possible: the name, department, and position of the person or persons allegedly committing harassment, a description of the incidents, including date, location, and presence of any of the witnesses, the effect of incidents on the complainant's ability to perform his or her job, and other terms or conditions of his or her employment, the name of the other individuals who have been subject to the same or similar harassment, what, if any, steps the complainant has to take to try to prevent the harassment, and any other information to the complainant believes to be relevant to the harassment complaint. Obligation to report. In order to take appropriate corrective action, NAMI Kansas must be aware of any type of harassment or related retaliation. Therefore, anyone who believes that he or she has experienced or witnessed any type of harassment or related retaliation should promptly report such behavior to the HR department or the president of the board of directors. If the executive director is a respondent or alleged victim, the report will be sent to the president. If the president of the board is a respondent or alleged victim, the report will be sent to the vice president of the board. Any volunteer who experiences or witnesses or receives a written oral report or complaint of any type of harassment or related retaliation will report to the HR department. Making false complaints or providing false information regarding a complaint is prohibited. It is a violation of this policy for anyone to make an intentionally false accusation of any type of harassment or related retaliation, or to provide intentionally false information regarding a complaint. Individuals who violate this policy will be disciplined or subject to corrective action, up to and including termination of employment. Step 2, supervisors. Supervisors must deal expediently and fairly when they have any knowledge of any type of harassment within their departments, whether or not there have been a written or formal complaint. They must take all complaints or concerns of alleged or possible harassment seriously, no matter how minor or who is involved. Report all incidents to the HR departments immediately so that a prompt investigation can occur. Take any appropriate action to prevent retaliation or prohibited conduct from reoccurring during and after any investigation or complaints. Supervisors who knowingly allow or tolerate any type of harassment or retaliation, including the failure to immediately report such misconduct to the HR department, or are in violation of this policy and subject to corrective action up to and including termination. Step 3, human resources. The HR department is responsible for ensuring that both the individual filing the complaint and the accused individual are aware of the seriousness of a sexual harassment complaint. Explaining NAMI Kansas any type of harassment policy and investigation procedures to all parties involved. Exploring informal means of resolving any type of harassment complaints. Notifying the police if criminal activities are alleged. Arranging an investigation of the alleged harassment and the preparation of a written report, submitting a written report summarizing the results of the investigation, and making recommendations to designated company officials, notifying the complainant and the respondent of the corrective actions to be taken, if any, and administering those actions. The HR department will determine if an in-house investigation will be conducted or if a third party will be contracted to complete the investigation. Step 4, discipline. Employees who violate the policy are subject to appropriate discipline. If an investigation results in finding that the policy has been violated, the mandatory minimum discipline is written reprimand. The discipline for very serious or repeated violations is termination of employment. Persons who violate the policy may also be subject to civil damages or criminal penalties. Confidentiality. All complaints and investigations are treated confidentially to the extent possible, and the information is disclosed strictly on a need-to-know basis. The identity of the complainant is usually revealed to the parties involved during the investigation, and the HR department takes adequate steps to ensure that the complainant is protected from retaliation during and after the investigation. All the information pertaining to any type of harassment, complaint, or investigation is maintained in secure files within the HR department. Other resources available. The procedures available under the policy do not preempt or supersede any legal procedures or remedies otherwise available to a victim of any type of harassment under local, state, or federal law. The next one we have is disability accommodation policy. NAMI Kansas and that is on page 15. NAMI Kansas is committed to the fair and equal employment of individuals with disabilities under the American with Disabilities Act, the ADA, and reasonable accommodations. It is NAMI Kansas policy to provide reasonable accommodation to qualified individuals with disabilities unless the accommodation would impose an undue hardship on the company. In accordance to the ADA, reasonable accommodations will be provided to qualified individuals with disabilities to enable them to perform the essential functions of their jobs or to enjoy the equal benefits and privileges of employment. An employee or applicant with a disability may request an accommodation from the HR department and should specify what accommodation is needed to perform the job and subject supporting documentation explaining the basis of the requested accommodation to the extent permitted and in accordance with applicable law. The company then will review and analyze a request, including engaging in an interactive process with the employee or applicant to identify if such an accommodation can be made or if any other possible accommodations are appropriate. If requested, the employee is responsible for providing medical documentation regarding disability and possible accommodations. All information obtained concerning the medical condition or history of an applicant or employee will be treated as confidential information, maintained in a separate medical file, and disclosed only as permitted by law. It is a policy of NAMI Kansas to prohibit harassment or discrimination based on disability or because an employee has requested a reasonable accommodation. NAMI Kansas prohibits retaliation against employees for exercising their rights under the ADA or other applicable civil rights laws. Employees should use the procedures described in the harassment and compliant procedure to report any harassment, discrimination, or retaliation they have experienced or witnessed. Following, we have the conflict of interest policy, also on page 15. NAMI Kansas expects all employees to conduct themselves in company business in a manner that reflects the highest standards of ethical conduct in accordance with the federal, state, and local laws and regulations. This includes involving real and potential conflicts of interest. This policy establishes only the frameworks within which NAMI Kansas wishes a business to operate. The purpose of these guidelines is to provide general direction so employees can seek further clarification on issues related to conflict of interest. Employees are obligated to reveal any potential conflicts of interest. Staff members report to the HR department. The executive director will identify corrective or disciplinary action up to and including termination of employment. Employees should contact the HR department for more information or questions about conflicts of interest. Exactly what constitutes a conflict of interest or an unethical business practice is both moral and a legal question. NAMI Kansas recognizes and respects the individual's employees' rights to engage in activities outside of the employment that are private in nature and do not in any way conflict with or reflect poorly on the company. It is not possible to define all the circumstances and relationships that might create a conflict of interest. If a situation arises in which there is a potential conflict of interest, the employee should discuss with a supervisor for advice, guidance on how to proceed. The list below suggests some of the types of activities that indicate improper behavior, unacceptable personal integrity, and unacceptable ethics. Simultaneously employment by another firm that is a competitor of or supplier to NAMI Kansas, carry on company business with a firm in which the employee or a close relative of the employee has a substantial ownership or interest, holding a substantial interest in or participating in the management of a firm to which the company makes sales or from which it makes purchases, borrowing money from coworkers, affiliate leaders, affiliate members, program leaders, program participants, community stakeholders, customers, or firms other than recognized loan institutions from which our company buys service, materials, equipment, or supplies. accepting substantial gifts or excessive entertainment from an outside organization or agency, speculating or dealing in any materials, equipment, supplies, services, or property purchased by the company, participating in civic or professional organization activities in a matter that divulges confidential company information, misusing privileged information, or revealing confidential data or information to outsiders, using one's position in the company or knowledge of its own affairs for personal gains, and laws and engaging practices of or procedures that violate antitrust laws, commercial bribery laws, copyright laws, discrimination laws, campaign contribution laws, and other laws regulating the conduct of company business. An actual or potential conflict of interest when an employee is in a position to influence a decision that may result in a personal gain for the employee or for a relative as a result of NAMI Kansas's business dealings. For the purposes of this policy, a relative is any person who is related to by blood or marriage or whose relationship with the employee is similar to that of persons who are related by blood or marriage. No presumption of guilt is created by the mere existence of relationship with outside firms. However, if an employee has any influence on transactions involving purchases, contracts, or leases, it is imperative that they disclose to the executive director of NAMI Kansas as soon as possible the existence of any actual or potential conflict of interest so that safeguards can be established to protect all parties. Personal gain may result not only in cases where employees or a relative has significant ownership in a firm with which NAMI Kansas does business, but also when an employee or relative receives any kickback, bribe, substantial gift, or special consideration as a result of any transaction or business dealings involving NAMI Kansas. Okay, and the following one is the cell phone policy, which is on page 22. NAMI Kansas deeply values the safety and well-being of all employees due to the increasing number of vehicle accidents resulting from texting while driving. Reading and sending text messages while driving is strictly prohibited. Employees who are charged with traffic violations resulting from the use of their phone while driving will be solely responsible for all liabilities that result from such actions and will be disciplined or subjected to corrective action up to and including termination of employment. Then we have the social media policy that's on page 40. Social media acceptable use. So, NAMI Kansas recognizes that social media provides inexpensive, informal, and timely ways to manage in an exchange of ideas and information. However, information that is posted on a website is available to the public, and thus the company has established the following guidelines for employees' participation in social media. Note, as used in this policy, social media refers to blogs, forums, and social networking sites such as Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, Instagram, and Snapchat, among others. Off-duty use of social media. Employees may maintain personal websites or weblogs on their personal time using their own facilities. Employees must ensure that social media activity does not interfere with their work. In general, the company considers social media activities to be personal endeavors, and employees may use them to express their thoughts and promote their ideas. On-duty use of social media. Employees may not post on personal blog or web page or participate on a social networking platform for personal purposes during work time or any time with NAMI Kansas equipment or property. Engagement in social media activity during work time is granted if it is directly related to their work and pre-approved by the supervisor. Appropriate use. Demonstrate respect for the dignity of the company, its owners, its customers, its vendors, and its employees. A social media site is a public place, and employees should avoid inappropriate comments. Employees who identify themselves as company employees or discuss matters related to the company on a social media site must include a disclaimer on the front page stating that it does not express the view of the company and that the employees are expressing only personal views. For example, The views expressed on this website/blog are mine alone and do not necessarily reflect the views of my employer. Place a disclaimer in a prominent position and repeat if it is each posting for each posting expressing an opinion related to the company or the company's business. Inappropriate use. Do not divulge NAMI Kansas confidential information such as trade secrets, client lists, or information restricted from disclosure by law on social media sites. Employees should not engage in harassing or discriminatory behavior that targets other employees or individuals because of their protected class status, or make defamatory comments or engage in other behavior that violates the company's policies. Employees should not identify or reference company clients, customers, or vendors without express permission. Employees may write about their jobs in general, but may not disclose any confidential or proprietary information. Employees should remember that any new ideas related to work or the company's business belong to the company. Do not post them on a social media site without the company's permission. Employees should not use the company's or other trademarks on a social media site or reproduce the company's or other materials without first obtaining permission. If the employee is posting information on social media site that is in violation of company policy and or federal, state, or local law, the disclaimer may result in discipline up to and including immediate termination of employment. Does anyone have any questions about those policies that we just shared? Okay, following we have, let me make my screen a little bit bigger. The following pertains primarily to the staff that is working with the Justice Involved Persons Project, and this is the dress code policy. It is of the utmost importance to ensure that as a team, we are following the rules and regulations of every facility we are working with. It is also important that we follow our NAMI Kansas policy and procedures when we are representing NAMI. Effective as of August 2023, below is a Justice Involved Persons Project dress code. Number 1, no jeans, shorts, sweatpants, leggings, skirts, yoga pants, or dresses with a high hemline while representing JPP at a site. If you are not on site and the occasion permits, jeans may be worn. Number 2, no crop tops, tank tops, off-the-shoulder shirts, low-cut shirts, or spaghetti straps while representing JIPP. 3, no gray or red sweatshirts, hoodies, while inside a facility. 4, no politically affiliated clothing while representing JIPP. 5, no open-toed shoes while at or in a facility or site. As a reminder, this is a NAMI Kansas dress code and it must be followed while representing NAMI in any capacity. NAMI Kansas provides a casual yet professional work environment for its employees. Even though the dress code is casual, it is important to project a professional image to our stakeholders, visitors, and coworkers. All employees are expected to use common sense and dress in a manner consistent with a good hygiene, safety, and good taste. Business casual is meant to give employees the freedom to wear comfortable, work appropriate clothing so they can focus on work performance instead of office attire. Jeans are an acceptable form of business casual for NAMI Kansas, not for JIPP while in a facility. When choosing your clothing, ever on the side of caution, it is always better to be overdressed than underdressed. Unacceptable clothing generally consists of any outfit you would wear to a picnic, beach, camping trip, yoga class, gym, or nightclub. Below is a general list of clothing to avoid in any workplace. Tank tops, cold shoulder tops, low-cut tops, clothing and or accessories that have political graphics, offensive language or depictions, etc. Ripped or frayed clothing, shorts, skirts, or dresses with a high hemline, flip-flops, or distracting or noisy jewelry. Violation of this dress code from the point forward may result in disciplinary actions up to and including termination from the Justice Involved Persons Project. And we also have this faith notice. So we have the written notice of beneficiary protections. Because this program is supported in whole or in part by financial assistance from the federal government, we are required to let you know that, number 1, we may not discriminate against you on the basis of religion, a religious belief, a refusal to withhold a religious belief, or a refusal to attend or participate in religious practices. 2. We may not require you to attend or participate in any explicitly religious activities, including activities that may involve overt religious context, such as worship, religious instruction, or proselytization that may be offered by organization, and any participation by you in any such activities may be purely voluntary. 3. We must separate in time or location any privately funded, explicitly religious activities, including activities that involve overt religious content such as worship, religion, instruction, or proselytization from activities supported with direct federal financial assistance. 4. You may report violations of these protections, including any denials of services or benefits by an organization, by contacting or filing a written complaint with the Department of Justice Office of Justice Programs. We are required to give this written notice to you before you enroll in the program and receive services from the program, unless the nature of the service is provided or exigent circumstances make it impracticable for us to provide such notice before we provide the actual service. In such an instance, we must give this notice to you at the earliest available opportunity. Okay, that was it on reading those policies, Dr. Harms.
Yes, so I am going to add a few things that are very specific to the JIP staff. The first notation is this notice of beneficiary. This is specific to JIP staff in particular. So we will talk about it more in our staff meeting, but as an overall wording to all of you, this is now required by the federal government to be read at the beginning of every group that you hold within the facility or within sites. If somebody requests a copy of it, you do need to provide it for them. So you will be required to take printed copies of this to each group that you facilitate, and you do have to read it before you start anything. I don't care if it's a peer-to-peer group and you have the same group of ladies every single week. It is a requirement by the federal government that this is provided at every time we provide a service, which for us is groups and classes. So if you have any questions about that, we can talk about it on the 8th. I'm getting ready to send that link out anyway. We'll chat about it then. So that means Friday when you guys go to Butler, David, take some of these with you, or Tim, one of you, and make sure that we are starting it from now forward. And same thing tonight for your peer-to-peer group, Terry and Penny. Just make sure that you take a couple of these and are reading it before that. Okay, the other thing I need to add is an addition to the social media policy. So those of you who are going to be working inside of the prisons, you do also have to follow KDOC's social media policy. So I'm just going to read it very briefly. And again, if you have any questions, you can either pop them in the chat or we'll discuss it further within our staff meeting. But this is something that you guys did have to read and sign and agree to within that packet that I did send you for your mentor training. So the state of Kansas's social media policy, the purpose of this policy is to establish standards for the use of social media for agencies of the state of Kansas and for employees of the executive branch of state government. The use of social media by the state agencies and their employees for business purposes can facilitate information sharing and serve outreach and communication goals. Social networking can improve interactivity between state agencies and the public and reach populations that favor social media over traditional media. So the definition of social media the state uses is it is defined as internet sites where individuals and organizations may share information and or engage in conversations with others in public settings, which include but are not limited to sites such as Facebook, Flickr, Twitter, YouTube, blogs, podcasts, and RSS. So the policy, official state use, so state of Kansas agencies that choose to enhance their communication strategies by utilizing social media and carrying out their functions or missions must do so in ways that maintain good order and discipline, network security, comply with public record retention, legal requirements, and ensure consistency with state and agency media standards. Agency public information officers and communication directors are charged with administering the use of social media by the state agencies in which they are employed. Material that is inappropriate for public release shall not be posted, nor shall personal opinions or editorial comment. Responses shall not be made to hate speech, non sequiturs, i.e., sarcastic comments, or issues that do not deal with agency missions. Information should not be released via social media unless it has been verified as factual and been approved for release following agency protocol. So this is regarding anything that goes on within the prison. Information will be posted on each social media site regarding under what circumstances a post may be removed from the site as follows. So comments not typically related to the site, profane or inappropriate language, sexual content or links to sexual content, solicitations of commerce, conduct or encouragement of illegal activity, information that may compromise the safety or security of the public systems, the state of Kansas, its agencies, officers, employees, or public officials, content that violates legal ownership, interest of any party, content that holds the state of Kansas, its agencies, officers, employees, or any public officials in false light, information that violates operational security or is protected by law. The above list shall not be deemed to be all-inclusive, and the state of Kansas reserves the right to add any additional criteria. Updating or posting to state agency social media sites by employees or volunteers as part of the employee's official duties must be done with knowledge and approval of the employee's supervisor and with adherence to agency policies, codes of conduct, directives, rules, regulations, and statutes. Any social media account created for official use by the state of Kansas, its agencies, officers, employees, or public officials shall be property of the state of Kansas and not the intellectual or personal property of the officer, employee, or public official who creates, administers, or maintains said account. Any user identification and password information for social media accounts must be provided to the agency appointing authority upon creation and or modification of said information and passwords used for social media accounts must comply with the State Information Technology Executive Council requirements to the extent they are enabled by the social media company in question. So social media use by employees, or your guys' case, volunteers. Employees may have personal social media sites, but these may not be represented as official state agency sites and may not be used during work hours unless approved by the employee supervisor and agency appointing authority. In all cases, employee use of social media during work hours shall not interfere with work duties. All employees are personally responsible for the information they communicate online. Employees should ensure that their social media activities do not interfere or conflict with their job or commitments to the state of Kansas, the agency in which they are employed, or the customers of the agency. To the extent permissible by law, employees waive their right of privacy for any information stored or transmitted on state-owned or leased equipment. When an employee's non-work related social media activities include any information related to their employment or volunteering with the state of Kansas or the specific agency in which the employee works or volunteers at, the employee must make it clear that the views expressed are the employee's alone and do not reflect the views of the state of Kansas or the agency in which the employee is employed or volunteering at, by stating, for example, the views expressed in this post are my own. They have not been reviewed or improved by insert agency or the state of Kansas. The application of this rule should not be construed to infringe on a person's right of expression, which is guaranteed by law. Each case will be given careful review prior to having any personal actions taken. Basically, what I recommend is make sure all your social media is private. If the state of Kansas finds it, I get a phone call, then we get to review it. Just use your common sense. Truthfully, make sure it's clear that Kansas Department of Corrections is not represented by your viewpoints. It's essentially all of that means. And any agency can enact specific policies as well. So each individual prison, DOC can enact additional ones at any given time that we must follow and maintain as well. And the last thing I'm going to add is the clothing policy that Itzel read is specific to JIP. The clothing policy for any other NAMI Kansas employee is within the handbook, and it's a little less strict, as noted by the jeans comment predominantly. But the one that was read is to be followed by all JIP employees. Extra underlying the no political related attire within facilities or sites. That's how we get removed from sites. And that's my soapbox for right now.
Thank you. Okay, so now we do have a survey we need you all to fill out. And we will be dropping that link in the chat box. Once you finish that survey, please let us know in the chat box. You cannot leave this until we know that you have finished it. So there's your incentive to get it done. It's super simple, should probably take you 30 seconds.
Yes, Penny, I'm going to email everybody it today, and so that you all have a copy of it.
It says date/time. How are we supposed to put our time in here?
Um,
I think just enter the date. That's it.
yeah.
Okay. Make sure.
I used my other name before I got married, right, on this because I haven't changed it on my ID yet or through the company. Dr. B. Hello.
Sorry, I stepped away. What
Sorry.
was the question?
I'll go
I
ahead and
used my
answer it. Use the name that you have on file with NAMI Kansas, but then put in parentheses your married name.
Okay, yeah, I just got
Okay.
married like a little while ago and haven't finished all my paperwork yet. So my bad. I wasn't sure what to do.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
And if for some reason the link isn't working for you, just let us know.
Um, I just have a page that just says survey.
Yes, the survey is a link in the chat box. Dr.
It's
Harms should
it's
have.
going through some other surveys, webinar feedback survey and exit survey, and
That
are we
Just
supposed to do those?
no,
no.
that is SurveyMonkey's attempt at trying to get business. So just ignore it. Once you click the verify submit, you're good, right?
Yes.
Yes.
So it's just a yes signature and date. That's what I got. That's all it is.
Yeah, it's super
Okay.
simple. Like a yes, I agree, yes, I was here, my signature and date.
Um,
I don't remember
I'm
seeing a signature, but I don't know if I hit a thing that said, can you tell if I'm done?
When you're done, put it in
Here's
the
who I
chat
have
because
so far that's completed and submitted. Kirsten, Penny, Eli, Chelsea, Tim, David, Jessica, Taylor, Amy, me.
Okay.
oh, I
Thank you.
I'm sorry. I'm just not understanding what I need to do here. It's not moving into anything.
Did you try clicking the survey link and it's not doing anything?
Um,
The survey link that's in the chat book and in the chat box, Susan, do you see that?
I'm
If not, Brittany can help you later and get it done. Okay.
okay.
All right. Sometimes navigating and trying to get in the chat box and grab a link is not always the easiest task. So it's all right.
Susan,
Oh, I
I'm
think
going
I'm
to email you the link.
in.
I'm just going
I'm
to shoot
in
you an
meeting
email right
chat.
now with it. So the link that is going to pop up in that email, just click it.
Okay.
And what pops up from that link, you just fill out.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Um, oh. Yeah.
And those who couldn't make it to the live recording will get a recording of it and also the link to the survey. I will send that via email at some point today, and expectation is to have that turned in as soon as possible.
I'll just have you help me with this a little later. I'm just not getting it. I don't want to hold everybody up.
You're fine. You're fine.
No
We'll
worries.
Okay. All right. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Thank you.
thank you guys.
Thank you.
Yeah, folks. Bye-bye.
Bye, David.
Um,